I'll never forget the exact moment Trevor said it. The conference room was silent. 20 people watching. My project, 18 months of my life, every late night, every weekend, every strategic decision I'd made, displayed on the screen behind him with his name in the corner. "We're moving forward without Arya on this one," he announced, not even looking at me. His voice was casual, like he was discussing the weather. "The vision needs fresh leadership. We need someone with a more seasoned perspective." My vision. My roadmap. My late nights when my team worked until midnight to hit milestones. I felt the room shift like a fault line cracking. People who'd been collaborating with me for months suddenly found their notebooks very interesting. Trevor smiled like he'd just closed a deal, like he was the hero of this story. But I caught something, a half-second glance toward him from our VP, like she was waiting for me to explode. I didn't. Instead, I noticed who avoided my eyes. I noticed who stared straight ahead. I noticed James, my desk neighbor, flushing red with second-hand embarrassment. And I noticed something else. Trevor had said the project launch was next quarter. But my original timeline in the approved deck said Q2. He'd changed it by 6 weeks without updating the official record. That detail would matter later. Much later. I walked back to my desk like nothing happened. My hands were shaking, but my face was still. Professional. Composed. I opened my laptop and started saving everything. Every email, every presentation, every chat log. Slack conversations. Meeting invites. Approvals with timestamps. I created folders. I organized by date. I wasn't angry yet. I was just documenting. My desk neighbor, James, didn't know where to look when I sat down. He kept glancing over, waiting for me to cry or yell or say something. I just kept working. "That was messed up," he finally whispered. I just nodded and kept working. An hour later, I heard Trevor on a call in his office. The door was half closed. His voice was rushed, almost panicked. I could hear every word. "No, she wasn't told. Needed to be clean. Yeah, I know she'll notice. Just trust me, the story upstairs is already set. We'll say it was a collaborative decision. Say she needed to develop her skills on smaller projects. Something about her growth trajectory." I froze mid-keystroke. The story upstairs. Not the truth. The story. They were already rewriting what had happened before I'd even had time to process it. Before my team even knew what was happening. Before anyone had asked me a single question. I saved that moment in my memory. Word for word. I spent that evening at home, laptop open at my kitchen table, coffee getting cold beside me. I reviewed project history, not just mine. I pulled up 3 other major initiatives from the past 2 years. Initiative A. Initiative B. Initiative C. The pattern was identical. Painfully identical. Project A. Launched by junior engineer Jacob. He presented it for 3 months. Built the roadmap. Convinced stakeholders. Then Trevor took over the final quarter. When the product launched, Trevor got the credit. Jacob left the company 6 months later. Project B. Designed by me and my team. We built the prototypes, ran the tests, wrote the specifications. Then Trevor presented it. My name appeared only in the support team section. Project C. Led by another colleague, Amy. She'd done the same work I'd done. Same result. Trevor repositioned himself as architect. But here's what made my stomach drop. Every single time, there was a senior executive approving the shift. The same name appeared in every decision. Every single one. Victor Caldwell, VP of Strategy. Trevor's mentor. His sponsor. His protector. This wasn't just about Trevor being ambitious. This wasn't just about one manager being a jerk. This was a system. And Victor was running it. I spent 4 hours documenting that night. By midnight, I had a spreadsheet with dates, project names, outcomes, and Victor's approval signature on every single decision. 3 days later, my access to the project management portal was partially revoked. I could still see meetings and emails, but I couldn't edit timelines or add updates. Strategic, not total. Just enough to make me irrelevant. Just enough to make it clear you're out. I didn't fight it. I didn't complain. I just made notes. But then I checked the access logs, the back-end records that show who authorized every system change. According to those logs, my access had been removed by IT policy auto-implementation. Routine process. Automated. No human involved. Except that's not how it works. Someone had to request it. Someone had to approve it. And there was no record of either. That was the first time I realized. They weren't just stealing credit. They were covering their tracks. And they were making mistakes. Called Priya in IT. Hey, I noticed my access to the project portal was adjusted. Was that routine maintenance? Let me check, she said. Heard typing. That's weird. There's no request ticket for that. And no authorization on file. But the system shows it was definitely modified on March 24th. Any way to find out who did it? Technically, no. Not without diving into the server logs. And that would require... Well, it would require authorization that I don't have right now. I thanked her and hung up. But I understood what she wasn't saying. Someone had removed my access without leaving a trail. Someone with administrative privileges. Someone who knew how to be careful. That was scarier than the initial betrayal. My annual review landed 2 weeks later. Trevor wrote it himself, though we'd never discussed my performance one-on-one. No meeting. No conversation. Just a document in my inbox. Arya is a strong team player who contributed to several key initiatives. It was vague, careful, calculated. Every accomplishment was softened into team effort. Every success was credited to cross-functional collaboration. Every individual achievement was buried under passive language. But there was a draft version too. An earlier version. Somehow, it ended up in my inbox, maybe an accident, maybe not. In that version, Trevor had written something different. Arya attempted to own too much of the project. She needs to learn to accept guidance. Her communication style can be defensive when questioned. Attempted to own. My project. My roadmap. My vision. I read that sentence 5 times. Then I read it 5 times again. I saved both versions with timestamps. Then I forwarded the early draft to myself in a personal email with a note about the date received. Documentation. That's all I was doing. Just keeping a record. Building a timeline. Creating evidence. I didn't seek her out. Amy found me in the bathroom a week later. She waited until we were alone, then spoke quietly. I heard what happened with your project, she said. Her voice was careful, like she was confessing something. I wanted you to know you're not alone. I looked at her. She looked tired, worn down, like someone who'd already fought this battle and lost. It happened to me, she continued. 2 years ago. Different project, same Trevor. Different sponsor at the time, but Victor backed him too. I filed a complaint with HR. My heart skipped. What happened? Nothing. They said it was a miscommunication. Process issue. They suggested I take it as a learning opportunity and use it to develop my management skills. She looked away. I transferred out 6 months later. Couldn't stand seeing him in meetings. Couldn't stand watching him present my work as his own. Did anyone else know? Did anyone back you up? One other person had experienced something similar. But they didn't want to come forward. They were scared of retaliation. They just wanted to leave quietly. I felt the weight of that. Multiple people. Multiple incidents. All handled quietly. All swept away. Why are you telling me this? Yes. Because I should have kept records. I should have pushed harder. I should have made noise instead of just disappearing. Don't be like me. Don't just leave. She walked out and I stood there in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. She hadn't even told HR the whole story. She'd been alone. Just like Jacob, judging by the pattern. Just like whoever else had left. But maybe I didn't have to be alone. I decided to rebuild the timeline. Not emotionally. Mathematically. Every meeting invitation I received. Every email with a decision. Every chat where someone asked for my input. Every status update I gave. Every milestone I hit. I mapped it all into a spreadsheet with exact dates and times. 18 months of work, broken into weeks. Then I pulled up the approved project charter. The one with the official deadline and milestones. The one the board had approved. The one Trevor had presented to leadership on March 15th. But when I checked the file properties, the document had been modified on April 2nd. 2 weeks after approval. I opened the version history. A single slide had been edited. The timeline. The launch date had been moved from Q2 to Q3. Changed after the fact. After the board had approved it. After stakeholders had agreed. No explanation. No update email. No change order. Just silently altered. That's when I understood. Trevor didn't just take credit. He was rewriting history to make his version of events the only version that could be true. He was changing the baseline so that his narrative would be the only one that made sense. The quarterly results came out. The project, my project, had exceeded revenue projections by 23%. 23%. That was extraordinary. That was the kind of number that gets noticed at the board level. The achievement memo from Trevor highlighted strategic decision-making and fresh leadership vision. It was beautiful spin. Completely false, completely polished. He made it sound like his changes had been the critical factor. Like he'd come in and saved the project from mediocrity. But the actual numbers, the raw data behind the results, they matched my original roadmap exactly. Not Trevor's suggested changes. Not Victor's executive tweaks. Someone upstairs noticed. Someone with actual analytical skills noticed. The next day, an executive briefing was scheduled. The agenda read, Project Performance Deep Dive, Full Timeline Review. No explanation for why it had been called. No context for what triggered it. I wasn't on the invite, but I knew what it meant. They were looking. Someone had noticed the discrepancy. Someone was asking questions. Waited. Trevor prepared for that executive briefing like he was testifying at trial. I watched him practice in the conference room, not knowing I was observing from the hallway. He'd run through his presentation 3 times, timing himself, adjusting his tone, perfecting his transitions. His story was flawless, seamless, impeccable. He'd thought of everything. Why he'd taken over, why it was necessary, why the results proved his approach was right, why the original timeline had been too aggressive, why his experience had been essential. Every sentence was calculated, every transition smooth, every objection pre-answered. But then I saw something. PowerPoint slide. Footer. It read, Original concept under Area W1 and draft. He'd used my file. And forgotten to change the metadata. I took a screenshot with my phone. Just like that, one small mistake. One thing he'd overlooked. One detail he'd been careless about. I filed it away mentally and digitally. I requested a meeting with our compliance officer, David Torres. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't even mention Trevor by name. I came to him with genuine questions like I was trying to learn the system. I wanted to clarify our documentation protocols, I said calmly, sitting in his office. If a project timeline is approved by leadership, and then modified afterward without a change order, who's supposed to be notified? Is there a standard process for that? David leaned back in his chair, studying me. He was smart. He knew this wasn't a casual question, but he played along. That depends on the scope of the change, he said carefully. Why do you ask? I'm trying to understand if there's a process I misunderstood, I said. For my own professional development. I want to make sure I'm doing things correctly going forward. He didn't push. But I saw him make a note. I can pull the official guidelines, he said. But Arya, if you're asking because something specific happened, you should tell me. Smiled. I'm just trying to understand the rules better. But 3 days later, David sent me an email. Per your inquiry, please see attached documentation requirements. Attached was a policy memo, and highlighted in yellow was a single sentence. All project modifications after stakeholder approval require audit review and executive notification. He was telling me something without telling me. He was pointing me toward the policy that had been violated. I submitted a routine request to IT. Could they confirm that all project files were retained according to retention policy? I framed it as a question for my own education, for understanding how data governance worked. Our IT manager, Priya, called me back within 2 hours. This time she didn't wait for me to call her. All files are retained, she said. Full version history. 10 months back. Every modification tracked. Every access logged. Why are you asking? Just wanted to make sure nothing was accidentally deleted, I said. I want to understand our retention policies. There was a pause. Knowing pause. Arya, deleted files can be recovered anyway. We have multiple backup layers. Multiple servers. Redundancy on top of redundancy. Nothing's gone. Not ever. Everything that's ever been created or modified on this system exists somewhere. And it's retrievable. She was telling me, if Trevor had deleted evidence, it wouldn't matter. Still exists. We could find it. We could recover it. The next morning, an audit flag appeared in the system, automated for files related to my project. It was supposedly routine, a random compliance check, but the timing felt deliberate. Someone upstairs, someone with authority, had triggered a deeper review. The machinery was moving. I just had to stay patient. Trevor wasn't copied on emails anymore. Not the strategic ones. Not the executive discussions about the project. He was still in meetings, but people stopped asking for his input. They stopped deferring to his judgment. They started asking me questions directly, like I'd suddenly become the expert again. I was added to something new instead. A project retrospective meeting with the CFO and 2 board members. No explanation. Just my name on the invite. No context. No meeting agenda. Trevor's face when he saw the attendee list was priceless. He actually went pale. He leaned over to ask what it was about. I just shrugged. No idea, I said. Guess we'll find out. But I knew exactly what it was. It was the beginning of the end. Trevor tried to control the narrative. In a company-wide email, he reframed everything. As we've learned, implementing new project structures can create some process confusion. We're implementing clearer guidelines to reduce that confusion in the future. Process confusion. Not deception. Not theft. Confusion. Like mistakes had been made innocently. But within hours, 3 process owners, people who'd actually designed the workflows, replied with formal disagreements. In writing. In a company-wide thread visible to everyone. The current process is clear, one wrote. Modifications to approved timelines require documented change orders. There is no confusion about this requirement. Another. Project ownership is defined at approval stage. Changes require stakeholder notification and audit trail. This is not ambiguous. A third. There is no confusion in the process itself. There appears to be confusion about who followed it and who did not. Trevor deleted the email thread from his own inbox, but everyone else had already received it. The record existed. The contradiction was public. The process owners had just publicly stated that the process was clear, and he'd violated it. I wasn't the only one saving evidence anymore. 3 other employees, Thomas, Amy, and a designer named Kyle, quietly reached out to me. They didn't know each other. They'd never discussed it. But somehow they found me, or maybe I found them, and together we realized we were part of something much larger. Thomas had records from 2 years prior. Everything documented. Amy had her performance reviews and the evidence of her complaint to HR that had gone nowhere. Kyle had meeting notes and email proof. I didn't recruit them. They came to me. Word travels in a company when people realize someone is standing still instead of running away. But here's what I noticed when I saw all the evidence together. In every single case, Victor Caldwell had signed off on the decision to reassign credit. Every single one. His name was on the approvals. His authority backed every lie. His signature was the final blessing that made the theft official. He wasn't just Trevor's sponsor. He was orchestrating the whole system. In a hallway conversation, Trevor cornered me near the elevator. His body language was different now. Less confident, more desperate. "Look, I know you're upset about the project," he said, almost friendly, almost apologetic. "But there's a new initiative starting next quarter. I'm thinking about bringing you back on as a supporting lead. Give you a chance to learn from the experience. Develop your skills." Supporting lead. On my own project's sequel. Like it was a gift. "Thanks for thinking of me," I said. "I'm actually exploring other options right now." He relaxed visibly. He thought I was leaving. He thought he'd won. He thought I was the kind of person who runs away. "Well, let me know if you change your mind," he said. "I will," I said. I let him think he'd won. It was the best strategic move I could have made. The next day I compiled everything. Every email, every file timestamp, every contradictory statement, every overlooked detail, every mistake they'd made when they thought no one was paying attention. I didn't write accusations. I just presented facts. Timeline. Spreadsheet. The metadata from his PowerPoint. The access logs that didn't match. The modified files. The pattern across multiple employees. The policy violations. The audit trail. I submitted it all through the official compliance channel. Not to David Torres directly. Through the system. Through the record. Creating an official documented report. A week later I was called to a formal meeting with compliance, HR, and our general counsel. This wasn't casual. This was official. They asked me to walk through everything. Once. Only. With documentation. They took notes. They asked clarifying questions. They didn't express shock or outrage. They were professional. Methodical. Then they said, "We're opening a formal investigation. We'll need to interview Trevor and Victor separately. We'll need documentation from IT. We'll need to review the complete file history. This will take time, but we will be thorough." He nodded. "Of course. This may take some time," the general counsel said. "We need to be absolutely certain of our findings. One procedural mistake, and this could fall apart legally. But based on what you've presented, we have sufficient evidence to open an official investigation." Understood. They were building their case carefully. Methodically. One mistake, one procedural misstep, and lawyers could find loopholes. But the investigation was open now. The machinery was fully engaged. And now I wasn't alone anymore. 3 days later, Trevor saw me in the cafeteria. He smiled, genuine, relieved, almost grateful. He thought the conversation had gone well. He thought I'd just laid out my concerns and moved on like a reasonable person. He didn't know about the metadata, the timestamps, the access logs, the pattern across 4 employees, the policy violations documented in writing. "Great news," he said quietly, pulling me aside. "I spoke with compliance. They're going to review everything. But I'm confident once they understand the full context, once they hear my side of things, they'll see this was all a miscommunication. Just a process issue." I smiled back at him. "I'm sure they will." But later that day, I heard him on the phone in his office. His voice was different. Panic. Desperate. "No, I don't know what she submitted exactly. Yes, I know how this looks. Can Victor help me with this?" "What do you mean Victor's already lawyering up?" Victor was getting a lawyer. Before the investigation even concluded. Before there had even been an interview. That told me everything. The compliance team found something I hadn't even noticed. In a late-night email exchange between Trevor and Victor, Trevor had written, "I've already told leadership it's my project. If we correct that now, it looks worse than if we just let it ride. Let me handle Aria." The timestamp. Sent the same evening as the conference room announcement. The same evening. Before I'd even saved my files. Before I'd done anything except sit at my desk in silence. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It was calculated. Premeditated. Intentional. That email was forwarded to our general counsel. Then to HR. then to our board's legal team, then to external counsel that the company retained. One email, one timestamp, one sentence that showed intent, not error. That's all it took. Victor stopped coming to meetings. Then he requested a leave of absence. Then his office was emptied. I watched his name disappear from distribution lists, from project charters, from committee rosters. But not immediately. He tried to make it look gradual, professional, like he was just taking a vacation. What he didn't account for. His approval signatures were embedded in every single document we were reviewing. Every decision he'd backed. Every timeline he'd authorized. Every credit reassignment he'd enabled. Every time he'd signed off on Trevor's requests. He was leaving evidence. Digital fingerprints. He was running. But the evidence was already everywhere. Already documented. Already impossible to erase. His lawyer sent a letter to our general counsel requesting a mutual separation agreement in exchange for a substantial settlement. Effective immediately. No notice. No transition. 3 weeks into an investigation, and he was already gone. Trevor tried to prepare. I knew because I overheard him practicing explanations in a locked conference room. He was alone, talking through scenarios, rehearsing responses like an actor preparing for a trial. It was a collaborative decision, and I was just the one who presented it. The timeline shift was necessary because market conditions changed, and I needed to adapt. I wasn't trying to erase her contributions. I was just trying to position the team for success. But every version sounded the same. Defensive. Desperate. Like he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Meanwhile, compliance scheduled individual interviews with every employee who'd worked on the project. With the other people who'd had their work stolen. With people from IT, from HR, from finance. They were building a complete picture. Creating a complete record. The web was tightening. And Trevor could feel it. When it was my turn again, they asked different questions. Harder questions. Questions that showed they'd already done their research. Walk us through your role in the project from the beginning, the general counsel said. I did. Only. With specific dates. Specific milestones. Specific decisions I'd made. And when did you first realize your contribution wasn't being acknowledged? The conference room meeting. March 22nd. When Trevor announced he was taking over the project. What did you do immediately after that? I went back to my desk. I didn't react. I didn't complain. I just started saving documentation. Why didn't you go to HR immediately? Because I wanted to be sure I had accurate information. I wanted to make sure I had facts, not just emotions. I didn't want to accuse someone without being absolutely certain of what had happened. Did you ever discuss this with Trevor? No. Why not? Pause. This was the moment where I could look angry. Wronged. Like I needed validation. Instead, I told the truth. Because I wanted to be sure I had all the facts before I said anything. I didn't want my emotions to color the record. I didn't want to give him a chance to get his story straight before someone reviewed the actual evidence. I watched them exchange a look. That's when I knew they believed me. Not because I was angry. Because I was composed. Because I was strategic. Because I had been thinking clearly while Trevor was panicking. At the end they asked, "Are you willing to participate in further proceedings if this moves forward?" "Yes," I said. "Whatever you need." The executive suite was closed for hours. Boards, investors, legal counsel, HR leadership, external attorneys. Board members called in specifically for this decision. I didn't need to be in that room to know what was happening. The investigation had concluded. Now they were deciding consequences. Deciding liability. Deciding how to protect the company while holding people accountable. Trevor was called in for a meeting with HR and legal. He came out pale, shaking, defeated. Victor's lawyer had already negotiated exit terms. Settlement. NDA. A non-disparagement clause. Basically, money in exchange for silence. The decisions were being made. In corporate time they were moving fast. In legal time they were moving at light speed. The email went out on a Tuesday morning. A restructuring announcement. Organizational changes to ensure clarity of responsibilities and accountability. Trevor's name was missing from the leadership directory. Victor's name was already gone. My name appeared in a new section, Project Leadership Council. I read it twice. Then I saw the calendar invite, a private meeting with the CEO, the CFO, and our HR director. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. No subject line. No agenda. Just a request. The CEO opened the meeting by sliding a document across the table. "We owe you an apology," she said. "And a correction. And a promotion." It was my original performance review. Rewritten. Restored. Everything attributed to me. Every achievement in my name. The memo was being formally filed. My compensation was being adjusted retroactively for the quarters I'd been misrepresented. But that wasn't all. "We'd like to offer you the VP of Product Development position," the CFO said. "Trevor's old role, but you'd be building it from scratch. Away. With full autonomy. Reporting directly to me." I felt something release in my chest. Not triumph. Relief. Validation. Recognition. The feeling of being seen again after months of being invisible. "I need to know what happened," I said. To Trevor. To Victor. "Trevor is being terminated for documented misconduct and falsification of project records," the CEO said. "Willful misattribution of work. Falsifying timelines. There are legal proceedings pending. Victor has already resigned and settled his separation agreement, which includes significant restrictions on his ability to work in the industry. And the others. The other employees he took credit from. Their records are being corrected. Thomas is being offered his old position back with a promotion and back pay. Amy is receiving a settlement and an apology. Kyle will have his project restored to his name." He nodded. "And I have one condition for accepting the VP role." They waited. Mandatory training on accountability and attribution. For every manager in this company. Not optional. Required. "If we're gonna fix this, we fix the culture. We make sure this never happens again." The CEO smiled. Done. 3 months later, Trevor's departure was complete. His severance agreement included a non-disparagement clause, which meant he couldn't badmouth the company. But he also couldn't claim victory or reframe the narrative. He was just gone. Erased from the organization. Victor's lawyer is still negotiating terms. His departure will be messy. There's a potential lawsuit. Securities questions. Board-level fallout. His name appears in documents that show systemic wrongdoing, systematic enabling of misconduct. But that's not my story anymore. My story is that I walk into the building now with a different title, different office, different weight on my shoulders. But not the weight of wondering if anyone remembers what I actually built. They remember. They had to remember. The evidence demanded it. Remember. I documented everything. Kept the record. And the company remembers the cost of silence. I didn't destroy Trevor. His own arrogance did. I didn't expose Victor. His own corruption did. I didn't ask for revenge. I asked for clarity, documentation, the truth. And once the truth was on the record, officially, documented, undeniable, the company had no choice but to feel it. Every corporate email now includes language about project attribution. Every performance review now requires documentation of individual contributions. Every timeline change now requires a formal change order and audit trail. Every manager now receives training on accountability. I didn't take revenge. I built systems. Systems that protect people. Systems that prevent silence from being an option. And systems are permanent. Systems change culture. Systems matter. Some nights I think about Thomas, Amy, and Kyle. About how many people left before anyone finally pushed back. About how close I came to being another name that disappeared. About how this could have ended differently if I just walked away like everyone else had. But I didn't. I stayed. I documented. I waited. I trusted the process. And I'm here now. I'm leading. I'm rebuilding. I'm making sure no one else in this company ever has to choose between silence and self-destruction again. I'm a VP now. I'm the one making decisions. I'm the one holding people accountable. I'm the one creating systems that protect the vulnerable and expose the corrupt. That's the real victory. Not revenge. Reclamation.